Matthew here from MiniWargaming.com, and this is a continuation of the series of how to make money with your hobby. One of the big questions that I've been getting that I want to answer in this video is how to set up a location where you can actually make painting videos. That seems to be the most difficult thing to be able to do properly because you have to get your lighting right, you have to really know your camera controls properly, and you have to have a place that you can actually put all this stuff. And actually, if you set up this area for videotaping, painting well, it actually is very good for just painting. Because one thing that you really need for good painting is good lighting. I know that because I've been painting up a lot of Necrons, and at home, where I paint, I have really poor lighting, and it actually does make a very big difference in how good the painting turns out. So I've asked one of the people who makes videos for the Mini Wargaming Vault, so this is one of our paid painters, this is Chris Bello. I've asked him to make a short video just showing how he has everything set up, because when he creates the videos, they are crystal clear. And so I wanted him to show you his setup, and then I'll talk about a couple more things. So without further ado, I'll turn the time over to Chris.
So here's our painting setup. Typically for painting, obviously you'll need your assortment of paints, your water. For a palette, I use a pane of glass. I use Windex to clean it off, and I find it far more simpler. Reason for painted glass is so that we have a translucency on the camera, as you can see on the video screen. If we had like a white palette, it would throw off the white balance, and so we use the we were using CD lids before, but I find the painted glass to be a much simpler solution. This is a simple little Samsung camcorder, and it's tilted down to focus on the subject. Typically it has a feature for touch point, so that the focus remains fixed. A lot of camcorders, they'll have an autofocus, and so with the touch point, it focuses on one focal point and then doesn't change. You also have to adjust for the white balance as well. Definitely need a sturdy tripod. Helps. I use 2 desk lamps for lighting, and I also have an overhead fluorescent system as well. All light bulbs are daylight bulbs, about 60 watt. Those are just parchment paper on the lamps, just to diffuse the light a little. Now for the model, I use these little model holder. I made these out of resin, and they're just excellent for holding onto the model. I also use these extra bits of flash. I just blue tack them down to the cutting mat, and just so that they have that angle, so that when I'm setting the model up, you can see that it stays somewhat in frame. It also helps me stay in frame on the film. And so that's pretty much a paint setup.
So pretty straightforward. You saw a few things there that you had to learn. For example, the type of camera that he uses. It doesn't actually matter what kind of camera you use as long as it's an HD camera that gives you a couple controls. He talked about spot focusing, or true focus, or type focus, or touch focus, or whatever it is. That's a function of his camera. What you basically need to do is you need to be able to have manual focus on your camera. He had that TV screen up in front of you. You can put the camera there and use the TV screen to focus it, and then make sure that you're painting in relatively the same position, otherwise it'll get out of focus. The reason that you want to have manual focus rather than autofocus is because sometimes your camera will decide to focus on something else. And that can really detract from the quality of the painting video. Sometimes it just does it quickly and it's not a big deal, but it still removes a bit of the professionalism from it. But other times you won't even realize that half the time that you've been painting, it's been focused on your thumb. Like you're holding the miniature here and the thumb's in focus and the miniature's not. And that can be very bad, and it doesn't allow the people to see what you're doing. Also, the other thing to really note is how he keeps his miniature in one place. Another poor example of how to do painting videos is when people are constantly moving it around, and you want to avoid that as much as possible because it's harder to follow and harder to see what is happening. So other than that, though, it's a pretty straightforward setup. The most important thing to understand is that there's lighting coming from all different angles. He might even do well to have another light behind him at the same angle as the camera, but in his case, he's got those two lights right above, and so those are providing nice fill lights. And that's parchment paper. I'm not sure if everybody if it's the same word around the entire world. If you know what wax paper is, parchment paper is basically wax paper without the wax. I think it's called baking paper in Europe. I'm not quite sure. You can also use it for wet pellets. So basically, the paper is safe to go on the oven, and that's why it's safe to go up against these very bright bulbs. Now those bulbs, I'm not sure what wattage his are, but we use ones that sometimes are as high as 100 or 200, sometimes 300 watt bulbs, because you need a lot of lighting. You need way more lighting for the camera than you do for your eyes. Your eyes are way better sensor than your camera sensor is, because you're a little more complex. Eventually the camera sensors will be just as good, if not better, than your eyes, but until then, or unless you can afford a really expensive camera, you don't really need to worry about that. Now, and for the camera, the things that you need to think about for that are that it needs to be able to do HD, which every camera does now. It doesn't have to have a microphone input. That is a requirement that I like to put on for all other types of videos, but since you're going to voice over the videos afterwards, excuse me, it doesn't actually need to have a microphone input. But it's still nice to have that for other videos. You need to be able to manual focus, and you need to be able to do manual color correction. It's called white balance. And you need to be able to do that manually, because what you do is after you have everything set up is you take a white piece of paper, let's just say this was white, which is not completely, and you hold it up in front of the camera, and then you're able to set, you say that is white. There's a button that says set manual white balance. You need to look at your instruction manual of your camera to do exactly that. And you do that with all the lights on. And that way, he's using daylight bulbs, so you can usually just set it to the preset daylight setting. But that's really important that you get your lighting right. If you look at the screen and everything's very orange or everything's very blue, then your white balance is off, and you need to learn how to correct that. And there's tons of stuff on Google that you can go and look for. But that should give you a bit of a primer there. So that's it, though. That's how you set it up. And then you just make sure that when you're doing the video itself, that you hold it in the same spot. It takes a bit of practice to learn how to paint when you're not able to just move it wherever you want, whenever you want, like you're used to doing on your own. It's a little more difficult to paint when you're painting on video, but it's well worth the effort if you can get that nice crystal clear picture. And remember, always remember, lighting is more important than your camera. You can have the best camera in the world. If you have poor lighting, it's going to look worse than somebody's point and shoot camera that they got for 50 bucks. And you can have a really crappy camera, and if you have really good lighting, it can make up a lot for that. So we kind of go in between. We have a mid-range camera. Our cameras cost $300 to $400, and we try to get as good lighting as we possibly can. We invest more into that, and that makes up for the fact that the camera is not this high-end camera that everybody else has. And it seems to work out just fine, as Chris demonstrated. So that's it. Leave questions below according to this. If there's any questions that I haven't answered, talking about how to set up for painting tutorials, then please ask them. And of course, if you like this, if you found this useful, make sure you like it either on Facebook, or if you're on YouTube, click the like button below, and subscribe for more making money from your hobby videos, as well as other wargaming related videos. This is Matthew from Mini Wargaming. Happy wargaming. One in particular, which is post your videos on miniwargaming.com. We have created miniwargaming.com, not the forum, but the main site, to be a place where users can upload their videos